Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with Wario or From and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. When I was around 9, I lived with my mom and little sister in a small house in a quiet town. The street was safe enough kids rode bikes in summer. Neighbors waved when you passed, but the house itself never felt right. My mom always said old houses made noises, but the things I remember weren't just creaks or pipes. They were something else, something I still can't explain. The first time it happened, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to my ceiling, blanket tucked under my chin. My room was small, just a bed, a dresser, and a toy chest under the window. The shadows of tree branches swayed across the walls whenever the wind blew. I tried telling myself that's all I was seeing. But one shadow didn't move. It sat low in the corner near my toy chest. At first, I thought it was a pile of clothes or a stuffed animal. I blinked and it was gone. A coldness washed through me, the kind that chills from the inside out. I hid under the blanket until sleep pulled me under. The next morning, the toy chest was standing wide open. I never left it like that. My mom hated when toys spilled out. I shut it quickly and said nothing. A few weeks later, my sister, who was only 5, told our mom she didn't like the man in the closet. She said it so casually that I froze. My mom brushed it off as imagination, but I knew from the look on my sister's face she wasn't pretending. She said the man stood in the closet and whispered words she couldn't understand. That night, my mom tucked her in, said a prayer, and left the closet unopened. Later that night, I woke to a sound like fingernails dragging across the floorboard, slow, deliberate, getting closer. The scraping stopped right beside my bed. I didn't dare look. I clutched my blanket, every muscle locked in terror, until I passed out from exhaustion. In the morning, long, fresh scratches carved into the floor stretched right beside my bed. I ran to show my mom. She got angry, said I must have done it playing around, but I hadn't. After that, the nights worsened. Whispers drifted from my closet like a radio too low to make out the words. My sister sometimes screamed, pointing at corners and crying, "He's there, he's there." I never saw him, but I felt him like icy eyes boring into me from the dark. The scariest night came in winter. I woke to see my bedroom door open, though I always shut it. The hall light my mom left on glowed faint until it clicked off. Footsteps padded down the hall, stopping outside my door. The hinges creaked and a tall, dark shape leaned in, its head poking through the doorway. My body locked. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would leave. When I opened them again, the door was closed. In the morning, my mom swore she hadn't left her bed. My sister, pale and trembling, said she'd seen the man standing by her bed. That day, my mom finally looked worried. She lit candles and whispered prayers in every room. For a while, the house went quiet, but not for long. One afternoon, I came home before anyone else. I sat on the couch with my homework, when a loud slam echoed from my room. The toy chest, my heart pounded. I crept down the hall and saw my bedroom door open wide. The toy chest was shut tight, but every toy I owned was scattered across the floor, as if someone had dumped them out. I backed away, bolted outside, and waited on the porch until my mom came home. She blamed the cat. We didn't even own a cat that could lift that lid. Years later, after we moved, I asked my mom if she ever experienced anything in that house. She hesitated before admitting she sometimes woke at night to a shadow standing in her doorway. She said she never told us because she didn't want us to be afraid, but she believed something was wrong with that house. She thought it was a man, someone who used to live there. She didn't say more, but I didn't need her to. I know what I saw. I know what my sister saw. Even now, as an adult, thinking back makes my stomach twist. It wasn't our imagination. It was real. And it wanted us to know it was there. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and I can't sleep. I still hear the sound nails dragging slowly across the floor. When I was 10, my family moved into a bigger house after my mom remarried. We needed more space, and the house seemed perfect newer than the old one, in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by trees. At first, I thought I'd be happy there, but soon, little things made me realize something about that place wasn't right. My room was at the end of the hall. It had 2 wide windows facing the backyard and a closet much deeper than the one I used to have. I liked it until the first night I slept there. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of movement inside the closet. It wasn't loud, just a soft shuffling like clothes brushing against each other. I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling. That's what people always say. But then the closet door shivered, as if someone had pressed it lightly from the inside. I wanted to run to my mom, but I couldn't move. I just lay there, frozen, staring at the door until sleep finally came. The next morning, the door was slightly open, even though I had shut it tight. When I asked my mom if she had gone in, she said, "No, probably just the air vents." But I knew better. Soon after, the nights got worse. I started hearing tapping on the window glass. At first, I thought it was branches, but there were no trees close enough. The tapping lasted for minutes, stopping only when I hid under the blanket. One night, I finally looked tanned, saw a pale hand pressed against the glass. The window was on the 2nd floor, far too high for anyone to reach. The hand stayed there, unmoving, before slowly sliding down and disappearing. I didn't sleep at all that night. When I told my mom, she laughed. My stepdad did too, saying I was making it up. But after that, I noticed he kept the hallway light on at night. About a month later, my 4-year-old brother started talking about the white lady. He said she came into his room and sat on his bed. My mom brushed it off, but one night I heard him scream. I ran in and found him curled up, sobbing. When he calmed down, he said the white lady had been standing in his doorway, just staring at him, her eyes completely black. I believed him because of what I had seen at the window. Not long after, I began dreaming of her too. She stood in the corner of my room, whispering my name in a dry, raspy voice like leaves rubbing together. Sometimes I would wake and still hear it, faint but real. One night, I woke to find her at the foot of my bed. She was taller than anyone I'd ever seen, her head nearly touching the ceiling. She wore a long white dress that seemed to move on its own, her hair black and stringy, her skin pale as chalk, her eyes nothing but dark holes. I tried to scream but couldn't. When I shut my eyes and opened them again, she was going to butt my closet door stood wide open. After that, I couldn't bring myself to use the closet. I begged my mom to let me sleep in her room, but she told me I needed to be brave. I think she was just afraid to admit she was scared too. The worst night came during a storm. Rain hammered the house, wind howled. I woke to the sound of my window creaking. The lock was turning by itself. Slowly, the window slid open and the white lady climbed in. She didn't walk, she floated, her feet never touching the floor. She drifted toward my bed, leaned down close, and I felt her cold breath on my skin as she whispered my name. That time, I screamed. My mom and stepdad rushed in. The lights came on, and the window was shut, locked tight. No one was there. They yelled at me for scaring everyone, but I could see the worry in their eyes. The strangest part is I clearly remember the moment between her floating toward me and my scream. It's like I blacked out, then came to with them standing in my room. They insisted it was a night terror, and my mom even sent me to therapy for a while. We lived in that house 3 more years. I never got used to it. My brother stopped mentioning the white lady, but I think he was too scared. Not that she stopped visiting. Some nights I would hear him crying, whispering "go away" into the dark. Even now, storms make me uneasy. I'll glance at corners, making sure nothing tall is standing there. Maybe people would say it was just night terrors. But I know what I saw. The hand on my window came before my brother ever spoke of the white lady. Some things simply can't be explained. When I was 8, I rode my bike every afternoon after school. I lived on a quiet street with small homes and tall trees. I memorized every crack in the pavement. I knew where the mailman paused. One house I liked was farther down the block. I had to reach the corner to see its yard. It had a long driveway and a wide front lawn. Most days, an older man stood at the end of that driveway. He always wore a hat, standing where the drive met the sidewalk, looking toward the street. Whenever I passed by, he greeted me. He never stepped off the drive. He never came onto the sidewalk. He would wave and say hello, then turn back toward his yard. I always waved in return. My mother told me never to cross the road alone, so I never went across to talk face to face. The man seemed to understand. From his spot, he'd ask about school, about my bike, even whether I liked the bell on my new red one. Once, he told me a joke about a cat that made me laugh. For weeks, we spoke this way. The exchanges were short, always from his driveway to my place at the curb. Oddly, he seemed to know small details about me that I never mentioned, like the fact that I had a younger brother, or that my dad had gotten a new car. I assumed he must have seen us from afar, just a neighbor watching the street. One day I rode past on that new red bike with the shiny bell. He called, "Nice bike." Then he asked if I wanted to race him to the corner. I refused, saying my mom would be mad. He smiled and replied, "One day." After that, he talked about little things. A bird that liked his fence, a rule about never stepping on a certain stone, a dog that always carried back a slipper. He noticed the kind of things people see when they have time. I found myself looking for him whenever I rode. Sometimes he was there. Sometimes he wasn't. Then one week, he stopped appearing. I biked past, but the driveway was empty. The curtains in the front window were drawn. I slowed, staring at the spot where he usually stood. I thought about asking my mom if I could cross, but she said no, the road was unsafe without an adult. A few days later, I spotted a woman in that backyard. Never seen anyone there before. I had to go around the corner to catch a glimpse of her. She had her hair tied back, holding a watering can, so I guessed she was tending flowers. I stopped at a distance so she wouldn't notice. I thought of calling across the street like I used to with him, but I stayed quiet. She didn't see me anyway. Later that week, I saw her again, this time on the back porch with a mug in her hands. I watched from my bike. Then she opened a side door and went around the house. I pedaled slowly to the corner, glanced down the block to make sure my mom wasn't outside, then decided to risk it. I pushed hard on the pedals and crossed quickly. Up close, the house looked larger. The driveway stretched down to the street. I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. I stopped at the end, near the back gate. The woman noticed me. She turned, saw me with my red bike, and walked over. She wasn't angry, just surprised. She opened the gate and asked what I was doing. I told her about the man who had stood in the driveway, who always greeted me when I rode past. I said he knew my name, that once he promised we would race. She wiped her hands on her dress like she'd been working and said the man I described sounded like her husband. I grinned, expecting her to say he was inside or away, but she didn't smile. She told me her husband had died the year before. His name was Harold. He died sitting in his chair. A chill opened inside me. I asked if she had a picture. She went in and brought a small framed photo. The man in the picture wore the same hat, the same broad smile. He resembled the one I'd always seen. Then she mentioned that her husband had carried a scar across his cheek since youth. I looked closely. The man in the photo had a thin, pale scar stretching from ear to mouth. The man I remembered had no scar. His face had been plain, smooth. The hat matched, the smile matched, but the scar did not. I told her I thought I once saw a mark when he rubbed his cheek. She explained the scar had always been there, though sometimes hidden under stubble. Then she repeated, Her husband had died and no one else lived in the house. She said she had only moved back the previous summer to tend the garden. She claimed she had never seen or heard anyone standing in the driveway. Fear settled in me. Backed her back down the driveway and rode away. I didn't glance at the yard again. The ride home felt like the silence after almost getting into an accident. I parked the bike in the garage and went inside. My mother only told me to be careful. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing the man with the hat, his laugh, the way he said my name, and that scar in the photograph. The next day, I passed the house again. The curtains were open. Sunlight covered the porch and driveway, but no one stood there. From the corner, I gave a small wave, but no one waved back. I pedaled away. For a while, nothing happened. I tried to forget. I found new bike routes and talked to kids on other blocks. Weeks went by. Then one night, I woke to someone calling my name. The voice came from outside my window. It sounded familiar, exactly how the man across the street used to say it. I sat upright, dizzy, listening through the patter of rain. My name was being repeated. I yelled for my mother and hid under the blanket. She rushed in, sat beside me, and I told her about the voice. She stroked my back, said it was only the wind. To reassure me, she opened the blinds. She insisted no one was out there. I checked myself, just light rain. My father got up, checked locks, and shined a flashlight outside. That made me feel safer. They told me I must have dreamed it. The next morning, my throat hurt from shouting. At school, I told friends. They laughed, saying I believed in ghosts. One dared me to stand in that driveway at night and call his name. I never took the dare. Days passed with no more incidents, and I moved on. Years went by, the neighborhood changed. The woman's house was empty for a time. Then movers came. Later, new owners painted the front. The driveway remained, now filled with different cars. I rode past but didn't look for the man anymore. I grew older. I learned new routes. I met new neighbors. At 18, I left for college. My parents sold our house while I was away, so I never lived on that street again. Still, the memory of that man lingered like a pebble in my chest. I often wonder why I didn't ask the woman more questions, why I didn't press for other photos. At 8, I wasn't thinking that way. I just felt scared. Years later, I drove down that block again. A child rode a bike near the corner. The driveway stood empty. For a moment, I wanted to stop and ask if anyone ever stood there, greeting kids. I wanted to know if anyone else had heard a voice in the rain, but I didn't stop. I kept driving, and the memory remains, sealed as it was.